As a parent, you take pride in your kid. If they're well behaved, smart, kind, or athletic, a good parent is gonna take some pride in those things. But this pride can easily fall out of balance. It can create a little monster, or worse, a big monster. If you take so much pride in your kids that you blind to their fault, if you spoil them and tell them they're the best at everything they do, when in fact that's clearly not true, that's how you create a little monster. A spoiled, entitled brat who thinks the world owes him or her praise for everything they do. But if your pride in your kids' accomplishments feeds your ego and you end up liking the taste just a little too much, that type of pride can create a big monster. A parent who simply uses their kid to accomplish their own goals with no regard to what the kid actually wants. It's similar to ancient times when a king would marry his daughter to a prince who he knew was an immoral man, but he was still happy to trade his daughter's life for political gain. Her only purpose in his eyes was to further his agenda. These type of parents use kids as a tool to get what they want, and sometimes it breaks the kid so badly that as an adult they can never recover. This was the case for Todd Marinovich, a first-round quarterback from back in the day. His father, Marv Marinovich, set out to create the perfect quarterback through intense and some might say inhumane training methods. From the time Todd was conceived, his dad was crafting what he believed to be the perfect environment to essentially grow a quarterback in a lab. So he was known as the test tube quarterback. Todd's mom wasn't allowed to have salt or sugar during the time she was pregnant with Todd. And when the newborn baby got home from the hospital, his dad had him doing hamstring stretches before dude could even crawl. Todd did eventually make it to the league, but nothing close to the career his dad tried to engineer. The Robo QB was treated as such, and the human behind the magazine covers was deeply damaged. His dad set out to make the perfect quarterback, but dude made a costly miscalculation. He poured everything into Todd's athletic pursuits and ain't poured nothing into his pursuits as a human. The Todd Marinovich story is the ultimate cautionary tale. There's multiple lessons within this one story. Today I'll focus on lessons from a parent perspective, but this is a video that every person will enjoy and learn from. Maybe the environment Marv created for his son would have been the perfect environment for artificial intelligence. It turns out that the Robo QB was just human after all, but that was the one skill his dad never taught him. Chapter 1. Marv Marinovich good traits. It's a cautionary tale for a whole bunch of reasons, but one of the main reasons that doesn't always get highlighted is that Marv Marinovich, Todd's over-the-top dad, wasn't a completely unredeemable guy. He had many good traits, and this is important because a lot of times we identify a few good traits within a person or within ourselves, and we'll use that to ignore all the bad traits, and we end up unknowingly justifying all the bad things that the person does or that we do ourselves. I think this is key in examining ourselves. Just because we got good traits does not mean we don't need to make adjustments in other areas of our lives, because if we don't, even a quote-unquote good person can become a monster if they are left unchecked. When he worked as a St. Louis Cardinals assistant coach, Marv set up an innovative light system so that Bonnie Sloan, the league's only deaf player, could read his lips in the film session. In the 70s and 80s, Marv was said to have treated black athletes like they were family. Given what we're going to find out throughout the rest of this video, I don't know if being treated like family is actually great, but the point is he didn't treat them any differently because of their race, so that's a good trait. In a bigoted society and a bigoted culture that is sports, where men dominate, Marv actually preferred working with girls. He said they worked harder and had less fragile egos. Marv Marinovich had a capacity for good, but his dark side would cast a shadow over his light. Chapter 2. Marv's shadow. Marv was obsessed with molding athletes. On its own, this is obviously not a bad trait, but it became bad because he ultimately placed his obsession above everything else. Instead of allowing his sons or his wife to be fully realized people, he tried to control every aspect of their life, making them all puppets in the Marv puppet show. Let's start in 1969, when Trudy Marinovich was pregnant with the so-called Robo QB. When a woman is pregnant, she'll often have powerful cravings. These are sometimes associated with nutritional needs that the body sends signal for during pregnancy, or just with all the hormonal changes that a woman's body is going through at the time. On a strictly human level, when these cravings get too strong, allowing some indulgence is a way to offer a drop of comfort during a nearly year-long process of pain and struggle that's unique to a woman. A little ice cream and pickles or whatever weird craving your girl is wanting at the time when she's pregnant can help to provide a few moments of comfort. There's not much you can do during the process that ease her struggle, but running to the store to get a weird combination of food is one of the few things you can do, so most decent guys do it. But when Marv's wife Trudy was pregnant with Todd, Marv didn't allow her to have even a drop of sugar or salt because it would interfere with his experiment. Again, it was all about him. His obsession to mold the perfect athlete completely overrode his compassion for his wife. And this type of oversight would become a lifelong trend after the child was born. Chapter 3, Robo QB is born. It all started out a little bit obsessive, but probably not damaging in any real way. Marv started by having his newborn son doing hamstring stretches in his crib, trying to lift the medicine ball before he could walk, and teething on frozen kidney to sneak in extra nutrients. He put a lot of thought into molding an athlete, but the second your mind goes there, it immediately shines a massive spotlight on the fact that the dude thought of everything, but never considered molding the man. Like he gave no thought to Todd's life off the damn field. As a trainer and a coach himself, he understood the human body, and just to be safe, he consulted experts in biochemistry and different science disciplines to perfect his project. The articles say he hired a psychologist, but I don't know how much of the psychologist's advice he really took, because a high school kid planning to major in psychology could have predicted issues with the way this man raised his son. Chapter 4, Todd's crazy diet. What was the psychologist's take on Todd's crazy diet and the effect that it would have on the kid long term? Todd wasn't allowed to have any processed foods, not as a snack, not on his birthday, never. Bro, we talking about never. So as a kid growing up in the 1980s, we talking about the absolute heyday of McDonald's. Dude was never allowed to indulge in a Happy Meal or a Big Mac. Like, is that not crazy? That's clearly overkill. I'm gonna argue the other point because this is the internet, and I know some people will argue, hey, this is a good thing. And I get your point, because McDonald's is clearly not healthy for your body. I promise you, I'm not sitting on here arguing that. But to impose not just limitations, but to strictly prohibit what was a staple of being a kid, fast food and sugar, all in the pursuit of something that the parent wants, in most cases will have more negative effects than positive effects. Todd couldn't even have a slice of cake at a friend's birthday party. He had to take his own sugar-free cake with him to the party. Many kids' earliest memories are going to birthday parties, eating cake and ice cream completely guilt-free, getting a sugar rush and running around until you fall into a deep hibernation. You can get away with this at that age, so let them do it then. Let them be a kid. Again, this is unhealthy if done every day, but I'll make the argument, and I stand by this, that it's also unhealthy to be completely robbed of this experience. And once you're an adult and out from under that dictatorship, you're more likely to overindulge in all the stuff you was prohibited from. Chapter 5, Todd's messed up childhood. Marv didn't realize it, but in his attempt to scientifically engineer the perfect quarterback, he actually followed every single step to create a completely broken human being. According to an LA Times article, Todd's mom, Trudy, noticed this early on and tried to run away with Todd on multiple occasions. But unfortunately, as significant as this seems, this part of the story was just relegated to one single sentence, and I couldn't find any more info on this part of the story. To be fair, I didn't watch like other video sources just for the sake of originality, since this is an old story and I know it's been covered a bunch of times. So I stuck to the written sources to extrapolate my own ideas and thoughts and takeaways from the whole thing. And in those written sources, I couldn't find nothing else on this, but it's still an interesting footnote nonetheless. nonetheless. Todd always ended right back up with his father. And when dude was in 6th grade, his dad had him playing basketball one-on-one versus an 11th grader. The 11th grader was instructed by Todd's dad to play the game as physically as possible. And since 6th grade, Todd couldn't stop the 11th grader who was pushing him around, Marv stopped the game. He said, "Man, I know you ain't gonna let him get away with that." He made the kids stop hooping and start fighting. Now, Todd had gotten his ass kicked multiple times due to his dad forcing him to fight against his will. And I was thinking, since they lock people up for dog fighting, this behavior from your dad should go in the same bucket. Now, it's a difference between old school dads whose kids was being picked on and they made them go back outside to stand up to a bully. This was a conflict that was brought to the kid and his dad teaching them to face the conflict head on. But it's a difference between that and forcing your son to play a physical game of one-on-one basketball against a kid that's 5 grades ahead of you and forcing you to fight when you can't manhandle the dude physically. But that story gets even wilder because when a sensible person saw an 11th grader fighting a 6th grader, they stepped in to break it up. And that right there pissed Marv off. So Marv punched the peacemaker so damn hard that he knocked the dude's teeth out onto the floor. And this is a core memory for 6th grade Todd. This only further solidified Todd's fear of his father and made him believe there was no one who could stand up to dude. Marv had a violent streak that did not exclude women or children. The dude was a monster. He once threw Todd's mom across the room where she crashed into the dining room table. He also threw a female neighbor over a fence. Todd once referred to him as a raging beast. When Todd didn't perform like Marv wanted him to, Marv would repeatedly hit his son in the face during the car ride back to the house. And Todd never told his mom or his sister about this, likely out of fear that they'd stand up to Marv and then he would physically punish them as well. Todd looked at his circumstances and he thought to himself, my mom can't stop him, dude at the gym couldn't stop him. The only person that can stop him is actually me. Not by physically standing up to him, but by performing well when I'm on the field or the court. So from a young age, he wasn't playing for the love or even for pure motivation like buying his mom a house. He was doing it to try to tame his beast of a father who was terrorizing the family and calling it love. Chapter 6, Todd's high school days. By the time he hit high school, everybody wanted a piece of the quote-unquote test tube quarterback, but the interviewers unknowingly would often put Todd in a really dangerous position. When asked about his father's choices for his life, Todd was never allowed to speak for himself. He had to appease Marv. Here's a quote from Todd when asked about this time period in an interview years later. "Am I gonna tell the truth to a writer and go home and have to deal with Marv? Bro, that's a effing no-brainer." So he lied and he said him and his dad were partners. He loved being pushed towards his goal in this way. He stuck to the diet even when his dad wasn't around, and that he was growing up in the perfect environment. None of this was true. Todd wanted it to be. Truth was, Todd did want to play football. He wanted to play the carefree game that his teammates were playing instead of the pressure-filled life or death test he was taking. Todd did love his father, and like most young boys, Todd did want to spend time with his dad. But as father and son, or even player and coach, just not his heartless dictator and essentially his slave. During his high school years, Todd's training only intensified. His dad called in a specialist to teach him how to visualize plays and to quicken his reaction time. In one exercise, dude bounced a ball wearing distortion glasses while he solved math problems out loud. Todd never got a day off. He worked out every day, including Christmas, birthdays, Sunday through Saturday. So even as a young kid, he was hopelessly overtrained, both physically and mentally. His mind and his body needed a break, or they were gonna break. One time after a grueling training session, Todd had a basketball game that night, and Marv didn't feel like he put out 100% effort. So that night, after training and playing a full game, and after not having a day off since the last time his mom stole him and ran away with him, Marv decided the answer was to beat his body down even more than it already was. So after the game, he made Todd run alongside the car all the way home, which was 8 miles away. And when he finally made it home, he broke down into tears. When most high school kids fall into drugs or alcohol, They do it to fit in with the supposed cool crowd. But for Todd, he did it for the same reason a grown man with kids and a mortgage does it. The dude was just physically and mentally exhausted. He needed an escape, and this is all he could come up with. So Todd started drinking and smoking marijuana at post-game parties after a win. Then he started doing it with a group of friends every single day before school. Actually having some ability to relax helped his game out on the field. Also, his mom finally divorced his dad, which surprisingly made things a little better for Todd. After the divorce, Marv actually lightened up a little bit. Not for Todd's sake, but because Marv started dating again. So this left a little less time for his obsession with Todd, leaving more time for Todd to live his own life. During that time, Todd set a national passing record in high school football for passing yards in a career. Nobody threw for 6,000 yards till 1968. A decade later, someone threw for 8,000 yards for the very first time, kicking things up a notch. Then once again, 10 years later, Todd became the first quarterback to pass for over 9,000 yards, and he fell less than 100 yards short of eclipsing 10K. Chapter 7, College Daze, aka Todd's Freedom. While this period offered a brief reprieve, it didn't fix the damage done throughout Todd's life. So by the time he made it to college, his recreational drug and alcohol use was growing rapidly. So I don't believe marijuana or alcohol are inherently bad. I believe they can be used to enhance an already healthy life. But when used as a plug to fill a hole in an unhealthy life, that's when you run into problems. If my theory is correct, that would explain why Todd struggled with these things as he did. But Marv's plan was never to create a happy human. It's like he put zero effort into that side of his kid. Maybe he believed that being a great athlete alone would make his kid a functioning adult. Or maybe he didn't care about that side of it at all. But he was a scientist, so results are results. That said, as far as athletic prowess is concerned, I guess Marv's plan did work in the short term, as Todd received scholarship offers for many major colleges. Though I do wonder if he still would have got those by living the childhood of a normal athlete. Todd attended USC, where he enjoyed more freedom than he'd ever known. He filled that time with the one escape that he learned in high school, and we know what that was. In college, he would have himself 1 year to chill and get a little break from all the pressure that he'd basically been under his whole damn life. Then in year 2, as a redshirt freshman, he could lock in on ball and be ready to start in year 3. But as fate would have it, during Todd's redshirt freshman year, the starting quarterback got hurt in practice. So the redshirt freshman, the Robo QB, had to start opening day of his second season. His dad still came to every practice, watching like a hawk circling his prey. He was always there. Todd couldn't smoke enough to completely block him out. It's like he was haunted by the presence of his own damn dad. Now, Todd Marinovich was a notorious slow starter, as he felt disconnected from the game that he played. But he would snap into Robo QB form immediately after taking his first hit. He had some great moments in college, including during his freshman year, where he led USC on a 91-yard game-winning drive. On that drive, he completed 11 passes, including a touchdown to finish it off. Then he completed the 2-point conversion to finalize the comeback win. He went off that game. While he had his moments and his college career wasn't bad, in the grand scheme of things, it was just okay. In 2 years, he threw for 4,600 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 21 picks. Marv engineered all his physical traits, but completely neglected his mental and emotional development into a man, and a man plays quarterback. If the man can't function, the quarterback can't function. So his personal issues never truly allow him to play up to his physical potential. You can't just feed the body protein all day. You have to also feed the soul and the spirit of a man. Chapter 8. Drug issues escalate. Todd's marijuana and alcohol use had unsurprisingly graduated to cocaine by the time he made it to his 3rd year of college. He yelled at his coach on national TV, taking out the anger he felt towards his dad on any other authority figure. He was broken in a way that he couldn't express to Marv, but he couldn't stop himself every chance he got from expressing it to every other authority figure. As we discussed, while Todd did have more freedom in college, the only way he knew to enjoy the freedom was through substance abuse. That is, until his coach asked him a question that nobody had ever truly asked him. Coach Larry Smith asks, "What do you want to do?" In the context of the conversation is they're discussing academics. Todd says, "I want to do art." Then his coach answered with the question, "Why don't you do art?" Todd became a fine arts major and he absolutely loved it. For the first time in his life, the dude enjoyed school. His artistic preferences are pretty fascinating and further illustrate, no pun intended, but they further illustrate human beings' need for some level of balance. And you'll see what I mean here. Todd didn't enjoy creating realistic paintings because his whole life he'd been forced to do things one way. There was only the right way. No room for experimentation, exploration, or creativity. For Todd, the whole point of painting was to actually create, not to mimic perfect form like he'd always been coached. The dude loved paintings that bursted with color and contrast, the type of art that's more spontaneous in nature. He hated the thought of a painting that was carefully planned out. When you consider the fact that his whole life had been planned out, is not a coincidence that when it came to art, he preferred the opposite. Todd preferred the paintings that looked like they just flowed out, a representation of the soul, an expression of self, something that wasn't made just to please someone else, something real that didn't concern itself with how others perceived it. His love for art would stay with him for the rest of his life. But the same can also be said for the sport that Todd was bred to play. Chapter 9, NFL. No Freedom League. Despite a shaky college career and serious character issues, Todd was ultimately still selected in the first round of the '91 draft. Brett Favre was drafted 33rd overall. Todd Marinovich was drafted 24th overall. Unsurprisingly, Todd wasn't satisfied by the selection. This was the realization of his dad Marv's dream. Todd had only recently developed real dreams of his own, but everybody around him couldn't stop telling him how lucky he was. And people often do this because they believe there's no way that things they deeply desire shouldn't satisfy you, as if y'all the same person. Probably one of the most annoying things that human beings do. People can always quantify what you have, but can never seem to recognize their own gifts and blessings. So they judge you for not being appreciative, while they fail to appreciate the good things in their own lives. Quote, "They say in our society, if you reach this, you'll be happy," Todd said in an interview. "I was miserable, but I couldn't tell you why. Everything around me was falling apart, but I have a bank account, millions of dollars, and for some reason that's not making it better. What the is wrong with me?" True fulfillment comes from pursuits of the heart. It's a gift from God that gives us purpose in this life. The majority of people don't behave like this is true. They think any pursuit that brings you riches is the way you should go. If you're good at something, regardless to how you feel about it, that's what you should do. That's what you should pursue. Passion is not important. Living's not important. Only surviving. I disagree with those people. While pursuing whatever brings you money the easiest, it's typically easier to do in the sense that it'll often align with the goals and beliefs of society as a whole, so you get less pushback. Here's an example in case that didn't click. If you're pursuing becoming a lawyer, you get pats on the back after taking one class. But if you're committed to becoming a successful musician, people think you're a clown until you get famous. The fact is, a huge motivating factor for the careers we choose is usually just about societal approval. The approval of your parents, or approval of your friends, or even random people online. But we already know that humans are imperfect beings. Why would you dedicate your life into pleasing imperfection? Pursuing something real changes your relationship with time. You go from spending many hours just riding the clock, quote unquote, killing time, to really living and appreciating every single second, partnering with time and allowing it to live peacefully with you. This is extremely difficult to achieve, but I believe that this should be the ultimate pursuit. When Todd got his $2.5 million for signing with the Raiders, he spent most of it just killing time. Through his ever increasing drug use, because now he had more money and time to use, Todd was completely spiraling out of control. His dad called in experts to fine-tune his football skills, but never taught him the basic fundamentals of being an adult man. This was the fatal flaw of the Marinovich project. Todd described it saying, quote, I think I miss human being 101. Todd tried to get sober on several occasions, but unfortunately failed time and time again. His first fiance could get down with some of his usage, but she left him on his birthday when he pulled out a crack pipe. It's not unreasonable to think that a little cake and ice cream, regular kind with sugar and all the normal ingredients, during his childhood birthdays might have gone a long way, because now as an adult he's chasing that childhood feeling that he never got to experience as Robo QB. But at this point, simple cake and ice cream won't do. So on his birthday, he didn't light candles, he lit something else. With every single stage of his football career, his drug use increased and got more and more hardcore. He constantly failed drug tests during his NFL days and was arrested for cocaine possession on multiple occasions. In 1994, just a few years after being drafted, Todd was completely done with the NFL. There was actually still interest in him from teams, but at that point, it was Todd who wasn't interested in them. He wanted to finally live his life completely on his own terms. Chapter 10. Let Freedom Sting. After a couple years of traveling around the world getting high, Todd most likely began to run short on funds. So at that point, he attempted to join the CFL. But after too much time off, his body couldn't handle it, and he tore his ACL on the first day of camp. An injury like this is horrible for anybody, but it's especially bad for someone with a drug problem. And of course, during this recovery, one of his high school friends introduced Todd to a new fix. Todd, this is heroin. Heroin, this is Todd. Todd introduced himself and got to know the new fix well as he continued to fall down that dark hole of despair. For the next several years, he tried to come back to football, most likely in an attempt to support his drug habit. It was all he knew, so he kept going back like a person trapped in an abusive relationship. But he never had a truly successful comeback. And over the next 10 years, he was arrested for drugs over and over and over again. When his son Baron was born in 2009, Todd wanted more than anything to get sober for him. But still, he failed. And just 1 year later, his friend who introduced him to heroin died of a heroin overdose. Making matters worse, that friend had achieved sobriety, but the monster would pursue him till it finally caught up. After 9 years sober, his friend had an overdose, and that final relapse took his life. By now, Todd had a daughter as well, and he wanted deeply to be a better dad than Marv was. Again, he wanted more than ever to try to get clean, but it wasn't getting any easier. Still, he kept fighting. He felt that maybe addressing things with his dad might help to heal some of his childhood trauma. If he can clean those closets, then maybe, just maybe, he could fill the holes in his heart with something other than drugs. But when he brought it up to Marv, who was succumbing to Alzheimer's, Marv broke down in tears and said he couldn't remember. Now, did he break down because he couldn't help his son? Or did he break down because he was losing power? Either way, now Todd was the only person on the planet who was there for all of it, and he didn't have the luxury, which is a weird word to use in this case, but go with me here, is sort of alliteration. He didn't have the luxury of having it purged from his memory, so he still had to live with it every single day. Then in 2016, he got arrested again after being found naked with drugs in his neighbor's backyard. His fight with sobriety continued round after round. He felt like a 6th grader fighting an 11th grader again. Now, as a man in his late 40s, Todd was trying to get sober and make a living as an artist. With art, he experienced freedom to create what he felt. Despite that, he still struggled to make money. First and foremost, it's hard to make a living as an artist, but also because his quote-unquote perfect environment as a child had really broke him down so deeply, he could hardly bring himself to sell his paintings, even when they were requested by would-be customers. Basically, when he does commission work, he struggles because it stirs up old feelings and anxieties about having to please somebody else. What if he loves the painting in the way it turns out, but the customer hates it and wants it done a different way? After being hit in the face repeatedly when his dad wasn't pleased, being put in this position was hard for him to deal with. So it would sap the creative freedom away from the art, and in a way turn the customer into a coach standing over him, spitting out instructions on how it should be done. Do it their way or else. I think that's pretty relatable to a lot of creatives. When you have to make something to try to please others, it really impedes that freedom of expression. But you have to learn to find a balance with it if you want to make a living. Now you just have to hope your childhood taught you about balance so that you can find the right balance in your work and your life. Todd's upbringing was supposed to make him good at football, but the failure to realize that the Robo QB was just a human made the experiment ultimately fail miserably. He was unable to perform on the football field due to his lack of mental and emotional development. At the same time, he couldn't perform off the field, so his strenuous childhood produced zero fruits. During his last big interview several years ago, Todd, who is now 55 years old, was still living a life that was in disarray. He's divorced with 2 kids, and he and his ex-wife both still battle with addiction on a daily. He's tried multiple comebacks into his 40s, but has never found the peace or fulfillment that he was looking for. If football without his dad standing over his shoulder still can't produce fulfillment, then what can? A heartbreaking question. Final chapter. Todd's breakthrough. Finally, in his 50s, Todd has a breakthrough. Oftentimes, a man needs the right woman to help heal old wounds. While the wrong woman will just cause those wounds to reopen, the right one will tend to those wounds as long as you're willing to also tend to the wounds yourself. Ali Smith, which I believe is short for Alicia, is the daughter of Todd's college coach, Coach Larry Smith. The articles mention that around the same time when Coach Smith was asking Todd what he really wanted to do, he was likely having similar conversations with his daughter, who had began to dip her toes into addiction as well. And just so happened, by the time her father passed away, she was serving time on charges related to drug use. But she eventually got clean and connected with Todd, meaning he finally met somebody who knew exactly what he was going through. Todd continued to go through the cycle of sobriety and relapse for a while, but had a breakthrough in 2018. Ali set Todd up in a good rehab center, and Todd was all in as he said he was ready to get clean. But when they told him the program was 60 to 90 days long, he flips out and starts screaming, "That's too long to be away from my kids." I guess he thought it was 30 days, but he starts a fight and demands Ali take him to the airport. He starts screaming every hurtful thing that he could think of. She just takes him to the airport and drops him off. But as fate would have it, his flight gets delayed. The worst thing in Todd's mind, but really the best thing. It gives him time to think about his kid and to compare a few months away versus a lifetime of never really being there. He thinks about his girl and all she's done for him, and he finally texts "I'm sorry" because he knows he messed up. Later, as he's still waiting on the flight, he calls her and breaks down about how lonely he has felt, how he's always been lonely and he's always been scared. He's opening up and admitting to his own inadequacies. As his ego and pride tear away a little bit, he gets to the crux of it and says, "I need help." Now, the wrong girl will continue to fight and argue in this case, but the right girl will understand that you're trying to improve. Ali drives back to the airport, picks Todd up, and as soon as he gets in the car, he starts crying uncontrollably. She gets him into therapy, and he uncovers facts that he completely forgotten from his childhood. Things below the surface that he didn't even realize were there. Pulls them up by the root, examines, and discards. He finally stopped placing all the blame on himself, realized that his childhood led him to a life of addiction. He recalls stories of his dad humiliating him and breaking him down more like a racehorse than an actual son. He recalled having a bad game and his dad ripping the name off the back of his jersey, screaming at him, "You don't deserve to ever wear this name on your back." And he did this in front of all of Todd's friends. This made him feel that outside of performing up to Marv's standard, that he was just worthless, that he had no intrinsic value. Everything was based on how he performed. He never heard "I love you" or even felt the phenomenon, other than if he had a flawless game on the field. He started to question how a father could make his son feel like that and then blame the son for his fall into addiction. He said it was all Todd's fault. There's no way to be completely healed after one session, but he felt a weight lifted in a way that he hadn't felt before. He said, "I can't describe it, but I can paint it." So he releases these emotions through his paintbrush. He got a strange feeling of gratitude for his last relapse, as it led him here to a place he never thought he'd be. He hopes to remain there for the rest of his days, but there's no doubt gonna be some struggle, as the Robo QB is only a man. If you're raising kids, you're gonna make some mistakes. Each kid is a unique person with unique needs. As a parent, you're more of an artist than a scientist. You shape and mold a young human based on the materials you have at your disposal, meaning who you are and the canvas you're working with. meaning who your kid is. The best advice I could take away from a story like this, without trying to be overly specific, is to always lead with actual love for the kid to find and achieve their own purpose, as opposed to trying to use the kid to achieve your goals and your purpose. Because when you do that, that's closer to slavery than it is to actual love. It's selfish, egotistical, and lacks true compassion. And in the long run, it hurts the kid a lot more than it helps them. So lead with love, work at it, and take the job of parenting serious. And if you do that, your kid will develop as they should.